Thank you very much, Nomuzi. I first met Riky about years, and I think he was a producer at the time, but I didn't really pay much attention to him. The one thing I did notice, though, was that he had a genuine spirit. And so I figured that's part of the reason why him and Elias got along. If you know Elias, you'll know what I mean, because he embodies a spirit that's very rare in this business. That spirit is the reason I'm standing before you today. I feel compelled by a sense of duty to try to contextualize a man that so many knew, but so few understood. I'm here to honor Ricardo Muziwe Chifaro Makado, an imperfect man who was constantly trying to do better. Riky was always either offering guidance or seeking it. I'm not the sort of person to share conversations I have with people, but what I can tell you is that the last few times when I spoke to Riky, it wasn't even about him. It was him calling me on behalf of somebody else that he felt we should help. That's the kind of man that he was. The news of his passing came as a shock to many of us. It was tragic, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. I can't tell you why he did what he did. We'll probably never understand it. But what I can tell you is that if you're fortunate enough to have been a confidant to Riky, then you'll know that these were thoughts that he lived with daily. Not because he didn't love his life, not because he didn't love his wife, not because he didn't love his family. He loved them dearly. And as I'm sure you heard on Tuesday, they loved him too. The truth is, Riky was probably able to hold on for so long because of his family, despite having been plagued by personal demons from a young age. On Tuesday, at the funeral, his family thanked him for sharing his gift with them. Today, at this memorial, I'd like to thank his family for sharing him with us. There's something about a person's upbringing that determines the kind of life that they'll lead. Growing up in KZN in the 90s, we never really looked at entertainment as a viable career choice. It seemed too far-fetched. So when one of our own did end up on TV, it was a big deal. An example is Robert Marau. That's a whole-time hero, you know? And nobody understood that better than Riky. So Big Zulu, mengabe nimbona mhlambe ngathi ube ubaba kunina, umuntu onqinisa idolo, onilethela induduzo. Ingoba wayazi ukuthi kulukhuni kangakanani ukufika kuleli zinga nifike kulona. You know, Riky would actually observe what was missing from the world, and then he'd purposely go out and be that for somebody else. And the reason why he showed so much love to up-and-coming artists is because when he was coming up, he felt like all he had were haters. He often spoke about the joy that a simple smile can bring. He wanted to uplift people with his music, even when he personally was in pain, because he hoped that by helping them through their own struggles, he too would find healing. An imperfect man constantly trying to do better. Now, I don't want you to think that the Riky that you knew was a sham. I don't want you to think that the happiness that he portrayed was an act, because it wasn't. Entertaining others truly brought him joy. The love you showed him, the support you gave him throughout his career, was yet another reason for him to keep pushing every day. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying clinical depression is something that you can push through. That's obviously not the case, and that would be silly. But I do believe that the buoyancy of life is determined by the tide of the times. Life has its ebb and flow, and I'm sure you'll agree with me when I tell you that the last 2 years, the tide has been low. And so I personally understand why this time around, Unlike other times, perhaps, when he may have pulled through, Riky felt overwhelmed by the burden of life. The zeitgeist may have also been weighing him down. All of us have been through a lot, and we shouldn't forget that when we encounter others. Even when we met with hostility, let us try to remember how hostile the world has been to people. And perhaps then, we'll realize why they can't demonstrate the kindness that we all require. And when you look at it like that, it's even more remarkable that Riky could be so gentle of a person while going through the kind of pain that we all know he was experiencing. Let's learn from Riky, even about forgiveness and reconciliation. This upcoming Cotton Fest, he was going to publicly make up with Casper, live on stage. He'd reached out to him last year, September. They'd spoken even all the way into Jan, and they were actually on good terms at the time of his passing. Lastly, Uncle Vinny, this message is for you specifically, but I'd like every young person listening to internalize it. Riky loved you. Don't listen to anyone who tells you differently. He was so proud of you. He wanted you to maximize on your opportunities and reach your full potential. So please, don't let his passing discourage you. Never give up. Do it for Riky. Always try to do better.